Our tale begins in a dimly lit cave, filled with the very monsters we love to despise. At the moment, they're celebrating the demise of their leader. With his death comes the chance to claim his weapon and possessions. The large goblin lying on the floor must be the chief, and the smaller ones trying to plunder his body are the mindless fools. They can't even decide who should take his wooden club. Two smaller goblins resolve their dispute over who would be the next chief in the only way they knew how, through a fight. The victor earns the right to lead. If you ever witness goblins fighting, you'd best avert your eyes because their brutality knows no bounds. They scratch, bite, and resort to every dirty trick in the book, hurling curses at each other. As for the rest of the lair, the goblins naturally gravitate toward violence. They form a circle and cheer the fighters on, eager to see one of them destroyed. Amidst the crowd, one goblin remembers that the chief left some untouched prey deeper within the cave. Now that no one technically owns it, anyone can claim it. However, there's a catch. Someone is guarding that prey with fierce determination. That individual is about to return to his station to continue protecting the prey. This goblin, unlike the rest, is an outcast, standing apart from the others with disgusted stares following him as he walks. Known as the guardian of the prey, this strange creature covers his body like a human, further alienating him from the rest of the goblins. Some think he's keeping the prey for himself, and they all have the same idea: just follow him to the prey. But the more cautious goblins hesitate, knowing others had already gone to search the cave for the prey right after the chief died. Those goblins are tough too. When the fighting breaks out, the smarter ones will seize the chance. The outcast heard everything they were muttering behind his back. Suddenly, a woman's scream, filled with desperation, echoes from deep within the cave. Spurred into action, the outcast bolts toward the sound. As he approaches the entrance to the chief's room, the cries grow louder. He pushes himself to run faster, sliding into the dark chamber. Inside, the prey fights for her life, pinned to the ground by goblins. She refuses to become a vessel for their offspring. Both the goblins and the prey notice the outcast's arrival at the same time. She cries out, begging for help with renewed desperation. Despite the goblins' hands grabbing at her, the outcast pleads with them to release her, but his words fall on deaf ears. The room is littered with skeletal remains of all sorts of creatures. The largest goblin in the room rises to face the outcast, declaring that the prey is now his, inherited after the chief's death. If the outcast disagrees and dares to challenge him, he's welcome to die at the hands of these goblin thugs. 3 goblins rush him from the front, clumsy but numerous. Dodging is his only option. The outcast can't believe how much trouble these lowly goblins are giving him. Their feeble attempts to scratch and bite tear at his cloak, but he grits his teeth and stays focused. He cannot die here. His fight has just begun. He must survive. His desperation leads to goblin blood being spilled. Once the first falls, the remaining 2 are struck with fear, knowing they could be next. Drawing his roughly made dagger, the outcast fells one goblin and intimidates the other 2. Holding the jagged blade high, he threatens to kill them if they don't leave. These goblins only act brave when they think they have the upper hand, but in the face of real danger, they crumble. That's exactly what happens now. The moment they see the weapon, they flee for their pathetic lives. Mr. Outcast breathes a sigh of relief, adrenaline still surging through him. The girl approaches, asking if he's all right and thanking him for saving her once again. Unlike the other goblins, Mr. Outcast has never laid a hand on her. He would sacrifice his life to protect her time and time again. She doesn't want him to die or get hurt in any way because he's different from the other goblins. The girl says it's always been like that. Mr. Outcast, in fact, was once a human. He first woke up in the same wretched room where they keep their prey. Instead of meeting God after getting hit by a dump truck, he unexpectedly found himself transported to another world, one governed by a system. Although he has one of those overpowered systems, it hasn't fully activated yet. Other than being able to see some of his stats, it hasn't provided any other useful abilities. Still, he hasn't been idle these past few days. He spent time talking with this captured woman, and from her stories, he started to piece together some understanding of this mysterious world. Unlike the world he used to live in, this realm, created by God, is home to various powerful races, creatures, and monsters. Majestic dragons, sinister demons, and powerful humans have carved their place in this world with their strength. As for the goblin race he reincarnated into, they are considered the weakest and most vile creatures in the realm, the lowest of the low. That's reflected in his miserable stats. Even among the goblins in this cave, he ranks in the bottom percentile when it comes to strength. Mr. Outcast's real name is Lin Tian, a level 5 goblin with God's blessing. He doesn't have a class yet and his stats are atrocious. He possesses the racial skill Gene Devour. Armed with a crude stone knife, his total combat power sits at just 30 points. Over the past few days, he's learned that there's one guaranteed way for goblins to get stronger: through mating. Goblins grow stronger through repeated mating and reproduction, but they can't produce female offspring. This forces them to capture and mate with females of other species, leading to a life of constant raiding and plundering. But Lin Tian was once human from the modern world. He finds such acts despicable. The girl, seeing him huddled in the corner, reassured him. After spending these days together, she could tell what was going on. Lin Tian was different. He didn't want to live among these foul goblins. Just one look into his sorrowful eyes confirmed her intuition. She promised him that once the Night Order came to rescue her, she would tell them how he saved her life. The Night Order is known for being fair and just, and she was certain they would allow Lin Tian to live peacefully in the village. Now that Lin Tian thought about it, the idea didn't seem so bad. The lady had given him a reasonable plan. Even if his system didn't activate in time, all they had to do was survive until the humans arrived, rescued the girl, and put her under their protection. He could figure out the system later. But first, they'd have to fight off some goblins, as the others seemed to have discovered where the prey was hidden. As the goblins returned for more, Lin Tian quickly instructed the pink-haired woman to hide in their usual spot. From behind the rocks, she watched as Lin Tian drew his crude stone knife. A desperate goblin was frantically running from the humans, desperately searching for something to mate with so he could get stronger and avoid death. Luckily, the goblin's erratic movements were easy to predict, and Lin Tian swiftly slashed his throat, putting an end to him. Now they knew for sure that humans had entered the cave. They were likely here to rescue the woman. She quickly stood up and ran toward the cave's exit, hoping to meet the rescue team, the mighty Holy Order. Lin Tian followed her closely. When they reached the action, they saw a knight in heavy armor and a shining cloak cutting down several goblins at once with a powerful sword chi slash. Lin Tian didn't know whether to feel afraid or relieved at the sight of such a powerful human. Loder, the knight, was a level 25 human swordsman with an impressive array of stats. His skills included sword chi slash, sword dance, and the holy skill sword return. Equipped with the judgment sword and platinum armor, his combat power reached a staggering 400 points. If you compare Lin Tian's meager 30 points with Loder's, the difference is staggering. This was the first time Lin Tian had seen such high stats since arriving in this world. Is Loder really human? The woman didn't hesitate to run towards the knight, smiling and waving, calling him commander. Meanwhile, Lin Tian looked around at the lifeless goblins scattered across the cave. As he raised his eyes, he saw something even more alarming. Loder had lifted his judgment sword, apparently aiming to cut down the surviving captive, the very woman Lin Tian had been protecting for days. The small, outcast goblin almost took the blow himself as he used all his strength to shove the woman out of the sword's path. They tumbled awkwardly to the side. Hitting the ground hard was definitely better than being sliced in half, right? Lin Tian was both confused and alarmed. Weren't these people supposed to be here for a rescue? Why were they attacking a fellow human? Maybe the cave was too dark, and Loder mistook her for a goblin. The knight looked down at them, disgusted that they had dodged his attack. The woman, now introduced as Kelia, pleaded with Loder, identifying herself. But the knight coldly told her to be quiet. He knew exactly who she was, but he assumed she had already been defiled by the goblins and might even be carrying their offspring. He found it absurd that such a tainted person could expect mercy from a knight. He harshly instructed her to repent to the Great Holy Mother. Terrified, Kelia grabbed onto the knight's cloak, desperately insisting that she had not been defiled. She pointed at Lin Tian, explaining that the little goblin had protected her from harm. Loder scoffed at her claims, stating that if she was going to lie, she should at least make her story believable. After all, no one in their right mind would believe a goblin could have compassion. He declared that Kelia should meet her end along with these wretched creatures. Lin Tian was stunned. Is this truly the morality of humans in this world? Driven by a sudden urge, he grabbed Kelia and made a dash for the cave's far exit, aiming to escape this grim situation. Armed with only a simple wooden club, he prepared to clash with Loder's judgment sword, hoping to buy them just a bit more time. He never expected this to happen. But just as the knight's sword was about to strike, a mysterious light filled the room. An angelic voice commanded Loder to stop, and the knight froze, falling silent. Meanwhile, Lin Tian found himself encased in a golden protective sphere. A blonde woman, draped in a holy veil and radiating golden magic, surrounded by heavily armored soldiers, noticed something unusual about Lin Tian. Kelia called her the Holy Maiden. Crawling toward her with hope, Kelia was embraced by the Holy Maiden, who helped her to her feet. She then passed Kelia to Commander Loader and turned her attention to Lin Tian, still encased in golden magic. She asked if Lin Tian could understand her. As far as he knew, this woman was the Holy Maiden of Freya, the figure Kelia had mentioned before. If there was any chance of him leaving this place, she might be his only hope. Lin Tian stood up and confirmed the Holy Maiden's identity, explaining that he wasn't a creature of this world but had once been human, only transformed into a goblin through a strange accident. He offered to explain everything if the Holy Order would take him with them. It was hard to deny that this little goblin seemed much more intelligent than the others. Smart goblins were extremely rare. Freya, the Holy Maiden, remarked that goblins are generally lowly and mindless creatures incapable of thinking or speaking so well. Perhaps, she mused, this one was a gift from the Holy Mother. Gently, the Holy Maiden asked Kelia if Lin Tian had truly been harmless. Kelia wholeheartedly confirmed that Lin Tian had not only protected her from the other goblins but also provided food for her. Smiling, Kelia suggested that since this goblin was so unique, they should take him back to the town. However, thorough investigations would be needed before any decisions were made. The Holy Maiden then asked Lin Tian if he would be okay with this arrangement. With no better options, Lin Tian placed his trust in the Holy Maiden, who had a reputation for kindness and compassion. He agreed to accompany the Holy Order, feeling relieved that he'd finally found someone willing to listen to reason. Staying in the lair would only lead to death, so heading to a human town to prove his innocence seemed like his best option. Freya raised her hand and made a strange gesture, and with that subtle motion, the golden sphere surrounding Lin Tian dissolved. She turned and instructed everyone to leave the cave. Lin Tian approached Freya to thank her for her kindness, promising he would repay her soon. A twisted, smug grin appeared on the Holy Maiden's face. Suddenly, Lin Tian heard the sickening sound of a blade slicing through flesh. The scent of blood filled the air, staining the ground beneath them. Loader had stabbed Kelia in the stomach. When Lin Tian turned around, he was met with the horrifying sight of the woman, who had clung to the hope of rescue, collapsing at the hands of her own people. Loader had stabbed her, likely assuming she carried a goblin child. Lin Tian stood speechless, frozen in disbelief at the horrifying cruelty of humanity. Then Freya's angelic voice echoed, demanding that Lin Tian repay her properly once they returned to town. It was the most demonic thing he had ever heard. 1 week later, under the clear blue sky of a tranquil town, the plaza bell rang, calling the townsfolk's attention. In the town square, a stage had been set up by the Holy Order, and Commander Loader was passionately addressing the villagers, the children of God. He emphasized the devastation the recent goblin raid had inflicted on peaceful Brighttown, where 30 innocent residents were killed by the goblins' sneaky, despicable attacks, an unforgivable affront to the Holy Order's authority. Hearing this stirred the townsfolk's anger and helplessness, reviving their fury against the goblins. They chanted for blood, demanding vengeance, believing humans and goblins to be mortal enemies. Loader continued, explaining that the Holy Order, representing the temple, had purged the goblins, avenging the fallen villagers. The Holy Maiden stepped forward, urging the people to keep praying and to devote themselves to the temple. Her angelic presence filled the villagers with hope as she promised that the temple would always protect its faithful. The crowd eagerly embraced her words, shouting praises to the knights and the temple. Meanwhile, in the Holy Maiden's private chambers, the atmosphere was gloomy and dark, a stark contrast to her public persona. As she gazed at an esoteric text filled with odd diagrams and magical symbols, Freya sighed in relief, satisfied that today's sermon had been a great success. Just like always, the people were as gullible as ever. Holding a vial of red liquid, Freya, now in her casual attire, felt pleased knowing that the townsfolk would offer even more devotion and tributes to the temple. But she wasn't alone. For a week, someone had been imprisoned in her chambers. The sound of her captive's voice dampened her earlier triumph. Lin Tian had been bound and gagged with a metal mask, tortured mercilessly, his left eye gouged out, and subjected to unimaginable suffering. Suspended on the wall, his bloodshot eyes glared daggers at the witch who had put him through hell. Freya looked at him indifferently. His ability to cling to life was a testament to the goblin's resilience. No wonder the temple struggled to eliminate them from the continent. With some time on her hands, she mused that perhaps now was the perfect moment to see how poison affected goblins. Hearing her speak such vile things with her angelic voice made Lin Tian's stomach churn. He yelled, furious as anger boiled within him. Freya had deceived him just as she deceived the people of Brighttown. She had even orchestrated Kelia's murder, an innocent woman. This is what the so-called Holy Order truly does. This is their twisted version of justice. Opposing the demonic Holy Maiden has its consequences. This time, a wooden stick was shoved deep into Lin Tian's mouth, making him cough up blood. Ephraia found it odd that such a weak, filthy creature like Lin Tian, a lust-driven goblin, dared to challenge her version of human justice. In her mind, this insignificant goblin had bewitched Kelia. For a human woman to defend a mere goblin was an act of betrayal against both humanity and the Holy Order. Kelia's death, Ephraia thought, was her final act of loyalty. To Ephraia, goblins were nothing more than pests, a worthless race that brought only suffering. Speaking to a goblin was already a great favor in her view. Lin Tian shouldn't be filled with hate, but instead should feel grateful. His small, vile body could at least be useful as a subject for the Holy Order's experiments. Her hand glowed with a golden light, and a magical circle appeared behind Lin Tian. Moments later, he was engulfed in unbearable pain as a spell burned into him, turning his hatred into pure despair. Lin Tian began to question everything. Was this really the end for him? Would he die a miserable death, filled with regret? Perhaps it was his own foolishness that had led him here. Reincarnated as a goblin, he had clung to his human compassion and naively believed that the Holy Order was righteous and just. His weakness and naivete had brought him to this torture dungeon. After being taken to Bright Town, Loder and Ephraia had taken turns torturing him, playing with him in cruel and sadistic ways. No matter how much he begged, they never believed him. In the end, Lin Tian wouldn't survive long, slowly being tortured to death by a sadistic witch with twisted desires. His second death was agonizing, the worst way to die. If he could do it all over again, he vowed never to trust humans. If given another chance, he would grind their bones and drain their blood. He would make them suffer as they had made him suffer. But that was only if he could live again. To his confusion, Lin Tian suddenly opened his bloodshot eyes. He looked around and felt something strange. Life. How could he still be alive after all those horrific experiments? And where was he? Before he could answer these questions, the system appeared, informing him that the Goblin Life Simulation System had been activated. His final evaluation, he had died. His foolishness, forgetting that he was a goblin and that humans would never trust or pity a goblin, had led to his demise. His week-long torture and death would forever be etched into his soul. However, as one of the worst fates for a transmigrator, the system would grant him a second chance at life. The system only activated upon death, and if Lin Tian understood correctly, this meant he could be reborn. But there was a catch. He would be reborn once again as a lowly goblin. To be sure, he asked the system about his choice. It explained that if he chose no, his soul would dissipate, resulting in permanent death. If he chose yes, he would retain his memories and be sent back to the Goblin Cave 1 week before his death. It took some time for Lin Tian to wrap his head around the parameters, but he eventually understood. With a twisted smile, he realized that this was the universe's way of giving him another chance for revenge. He had to repay Loder and Ephraia for every cruel thing they had done to him. Without hesitation, he chose to return to the past and change his fate. Fueled by a burning desire for vengeance, Lin Tian knew his new life as a goblin version 2.0 was about to begin. No more Mr. Nice Guy. The void around him dissolved into a digital swirl as the process of transferring him back to the Goblin Cave commenced. Once the process was complete, the system gave him a small boost to help him survive a little longer in this second life. Lin Tian looked at his hands, feeling slightly stronger and lighter. The enhancement was minor, just as the system had said, but it was better than nothing. The system warned him that despite his rebirth, the danger wasn't over. The Holy Order was already closing in on his location. If he died again, the system wouldn't be able to revive him. This was exactly what Lin Tian had expected. At this moment, Lin Tian needed to think of ways to handle the inevitable arrival of the Holy Order. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not even for a second. First, he asked the system what it could offer. The system, called the Goblin Life Simulation System, allows him to simulate his life to predict future events. Each decision he makes leads to different outcomes. Each simulation lasts 24 hours, and at the end he earns points that can be exchanged for items. The ability to see the future through simulations was not to be underestimated, and Lin Tian realized he could definitely use this to his advantage. He quickly activated the prompt and started his first life simulation. The current mission was to escape the Goblin Cave. With Holy Knight Loder closing in on the Goblin Lair, Lin Tian was presented with 3 choices. The first option was to warn his fellow goblins and unite to fight Loder, Ephraia, and their men, earning 10 points. The second option was to abandon the other goblins and escape before they were all wiped out, earning 5 points. The third option was to hide in the cave and hope Loader and the Holy Order didn't find him, which would earn him 0 points. Lin Tian carefully weighed his options. Despite being given 3 choices, some were clearly hopeless. He knew that even if all the goblins banded together, they would never stand a chance against Loader's overwhelming strength. Escaping was the only viable way to save himself. But with the system, he could simulate the first option, which promised the highest reward. If he could accumulate enough points, he might be able to exchange them for a weapon, potentially giving him a chance to take them out with a surprise attack. As expected, the simulation ended with his death. While Lin Tian managed to lead the goblins in a desperate fight against Loader, the vast difference in power resulted in every goblin being slaughtered. The system advised him to carefully assess his own abilities before making crucial decisions. It was now clear that relying on the goblins wasn't a realistic path to survival. Nevertheless, he earned 10 points from the simulation. Excited, Lin Tian opened the points exchange shop. A projection of various weapons appeared before him, but unfortunately, most were priced in the hundreds or even thousands of points. With only 10 points, his options were limited. At least there was a dagger priced exactly at 10 points. It was an elven lightweight swift blade, a small but incredibly sharp weapon crafted by elves. Though fragile, it was leagues ahead of the crude weapons goblins typically used. Lin Tian purchased the dagger and equipped it immediately. The new blade increased his strength by 15 points and boosted his speed by 10%. The weapon's sharpness was impressive, making it possible for a well-placed strike to be lethal. Now armed, Lin Tian had one more question for the system. He had been sent back in time, but there was no sign of Kelia in the cave. Where had she gone? The system explained that due to his rebirth, certain details of the timeline had shifted. In this new timeline, Kelia had not been captured during the goblin raid and was living a happy life in Brighttown. Lin Tian was surprised to hear that she was safe, spared from the horrors of being captured by goblins and later killed by her so-called rescuers. A small smile crept across Lin Tian's face. In a strange way, he had fulfilled his promise to Kelia. With that, he had no more attachments holding him back. Now he could face the Holy Order with no hesitation. But first he had to escape and survive. Lin Tian found the narrowest passage out of the cave. The entrance outside was smaller, so the guards stationed there were likely weaker. He scouted the cavern's opening and spotted 2 guards chatting about their disgust for goblins and how easy this assignment would be. Remaining hidden, Lin Tian began formulating his plan. The guards seemed relieved to have been assigned to the smaller entrance, confident that any goblin attempting to escape could be easily crushed with a single hammer swing. They also mentioned that Lord Loader had ordered them to kill any girl who tried to escape during the chaos. No survivors were to reach the village. Hearing this made Lin Tian's blood boil. The Holy Order would even murder innocent humans without reason, let alone goblins. There was no choice but to fight his way out. Lin Tian devised a plan and pinched his nose to make his voice higher. Then he mimicked the voice of a girl from Brighttown, frantically pleading for help, claiming to have escaped from the goblin's grasp. The guards perked up, excited to finally get some action. They figured all they had to do was kill this straggler, and Lord Loader would reward them. Slowly, they approached the cave entrance with hidden blades, one guard calling out with a fake, reassuring smile, telling the girl not to be afraid now that the knights were there to help. But before the guard could finish his deceitful words, his blood splattered against the cave walls. Lin Tian emerged with the cold eyes of a killer. His new blade had just claimed its first life, baptized in human blood. And now the slaughter had only begun. The second guard stared at his frozen comrade in disbelief, wondering why he was hesitating to kill a weak goblin. Confused, he approached, completely unaware that something had gone terribly wrong. In his mind, they were the hunters and the goblin was just the prey. But Lin Tian saw things differently. From the moment the humans betrayed his trust, the roles had reversed. Now Lin Tian had one goal: to grow stronger and exact his revenge. Seizing the moment, he charged at the guard, who hadn't yet grasped what was happening, sending him flying. Caught off guard, the man lost his balance and became an easy target. In the blink of an eye, Lin Tian's blade slashed through the guard, leaving a deep wound. The guard couldn't believe he had been taken down so easily by a goblin. His thoughts were soon clouded by the intense pain that overwhelmed him. Falling to the ground with a pained cry, he looked up at the goblin he and his friend had intended to kill just minutes ago. But now the situation had completely shifted. The goblin in front of him seemed like a demon, and in some ways he wasn't wrong. Desperate, the guard started pleading for his life, hoping that, by some miracle, the goblin would understand. He showed Lin Tian a medallion with the image of a woman and child, explaining that he had a wife and daughter waiting for him. It was a cruel irony for Lin Tian to watch the same man, who had tried to kill him moments before, now begging for mercy behind such a flimsy excuse. The knight continued to justify his actions, claiming that he had only been following orders from the Holy Order. He promised that if Lin Tian spared him, he would bring him a bag of gold coins and even offer a human girl. But no matter how hard the guard tried to bargain, Lin Tian remained unmoved. In his short and cursed life, he had grown completely disillusioned with humans. The guard foolishly thought he could deceive Lin Tian with empty promises and a fake smile, but Lin Tian had already noticed the knife hidden behind his back. Unfortunately for the guard, he never realized how much he had underestimated his opponent. Seeing Lin Tian as nothing more than a mindless goblin, the guard lunged at him with a mocking laugh. The next moment, blood sprayed across the ground, but it wasn't Lin Tian's. The guard, who had assumed himself the clever one, was now both brainless and headless. The shattered medallion and the knife he never got to use lay abandoned on the ground. It was over. After the fight, Lin Tian felt more certain than ever that he couldn't trust anyone, least of all humans. Suddenly, the sound of movement and a bright light appeared from deep within the forest. It was clear that the Saint Maiden and Loader were already close. In his current state, Lin Tian was far from ready to face them. He needed time to grow stronger. Taking a shirt from one of the fallen guards, Lin Tian set off. He vowed that he would meet Loader and Ephraia again, and when that day came, they would pay for all the suffering they had caused him. When Ephraia and Loader arrived at the scene where the two dead guards lay, Loader was puzzled. Normally, 2 guards could easily handle even a group of 24 goblins. This situation was different. If there was something capable of defeating 2 armed warriors, it had to be a mutant goblin. They were the ones who most frequently caused trouble for the Holy Order. Allowing such a creature to escape would only spell more problems in the future. Both Loader and Ephraia understood this well. Loader kicked the corpse of the fallen guard, seeing him as nothing more than worthless trash, unable to handle even a mutated goblin. Ephraia, however, was filled with excitement. The thought of a mutated goblin stirred her twisted desires, and memories of her past fun with that intelligent goblin only fueled her eagerness. She couldn't wait to get her hands on such a fascinating toy again. As night fell, Lin Tian had managed to get far enough away to escape Ephraia and Loader's pursuit. After a long, exhausting journey, he decided to take a break and regain his strength. His primary focus was revenge. He intended to make the Order suffer as they had made him suffer. Goblins had the ability to enhance their traits through mating and devouring. By improving his own attributes and producing stronger offspring, Lin Tian aimed to raise a powerful generation, one that would make humans fear death and tremble in his presence. Suddenly, the sound of rustling from the bushes behind him snapped him out of his thoughts. Lin Tian immediately became alert, suspecting that the Holy Order might still be tracking him. When he saw a cloaked figure moving nearby, he launched an attack without hesitation, catching the stranger off guard. His strategy paid off. The figure was so startled that they stumbled and fell to the ground. However, Lin Tian had misjudged something. The stranger was not a human but a goblin. Based on their behavior, they didn't seem to pose any threat. Lin Tian was surprised by this unexpected turn of events but quickly regained his focus, staying cautious. After everything he had been through, trusting anyone was not something he would do easily. But then what he saw left him in shock. Lying on the ground before him was a beautiful goblin girl, looking up at him with wide, frightened eyes. Lin Tian was stunned. He had always believed that goblins were only male, yet this creature was clearly female. After gathering herself, the goblin girl nervously pleaded with Lin Tian not to hurt her, explaining that she had only come to fetch water. The fact that the goblin girl could speak fluently surprised Lin Tian even more. Curious, he checked her status window, and the information provided by the system clarified everything. She was a level 3 goblin, and her profession was listed as a god messenger, which explained her unusual abilities. Among her skills were devouring and exuberant growth. However, what caught Lin Tian's attention most was a note that stated if a male goblin teamed up with a female goblin, the male could evolve into a legendary goblin god. This revelation made Lin Tian pause. Becoming a goblin god meant immense strength, exactly what he needed for his plans. He realized this was an opportunity he couldn't afford to miss. However, seeing the intensity in his eyes, the frightened goblin girl mistook his interest for danger and began pleading with him again. She explained that if she didn't return with water, the tribe leader would beat her to death. Realizing his mistake, Lin Tian apologized and attempted to calm her down. He gently stroked her shoulder, assuring her that he wouldn't harm her. He knew he couldn't let her cry, as it might attract unwanted attention. The best approach was to clear up the misunderstanding as quickly as possible. Fortunately, the goblin girl calmed down and no longer seemed as frightened. Crawling closer to Lin Tian, she eagerly asked if he could speak as well, to which he nodded in agreement. Typically, goblins struggled with speech, making it difficult for the girl to communicate with her own tribe. She was astonished by Lin Tian's kindness, a stark contrast to the constant mistreatment she endured from the other goblins, who only scolded or beat her. She was so comforted by his presence that she even offered to take him back to her village. Intrigued by the mention of the village, Lin Tian began asking her about it. Given that he was unsure if he could continue evading the Holy Order's pursuit, hiding in a goblin village seemed like the perfect temporary solution. He could blend in. His sudden shift in demeanor confused the girl a little, but after seeing his genuine interest, she agreed to take him to the village. A sly smile crossed Lin Tian's face. He had been thinking about where he could find loyal followers, and now the opportunity had presented itself. When they arrived at the village, a group of armed goblins emerged from their tents, immediately surrounding him. Like all goblins, they were puzzled by Lin Tian's human-like attire. They had never seen such an unusual goblin before. Meanwhile, Lin Tian quickly assessed their numbers and was pleased to discover that the village was quite large. Now he could begin the process of gaining their trust. He started by asking for permission to join the village and meet the leader. The goblins didn't take kindly to his request. To them, it was absurd for some stranger to show up at their home and make demands. Their plan was to capture this bold outsider, beat him, and then present him to their boss. But before they could act, the goblin girl intervened, urging them to wait and not attack Lin Tian until after he had met with their leader. This suggestion might have delayed the inevitable fight, but their plans were soon interrupted by the boss himself, who had heard the commotion and came out to investigate. As soon as the boss appeared, all the other goblins fell silent, while Lin Tian tensed up. The boss was clearly annoyed at being woken. And Lin Tian had reason to be on edge. The village chief was at level 25, armed with quality weapons, and possessed an impressive array of skills. Lin Tian was surprised to find such a powerful leader in the village. Unfortunately, if he wanted to take over and command the goblins for his own purposes, he would have to defeat the boss to claim his place.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. See you in the next video. Bye for now.